Kraft pumps once, is in trouble, eludes a tackle, gets out of the end zone. He's to the 5, he's to the 10, Kraft to the 15, out across the 20, Kraft to the 25, out across the 30, 35, 40, look out, he could go, he's to the 40, he's to the 30, he's to the 20, he's to the 10, he's all the way!
Right on the end. The snap is down. The kick is up. The kick is on its way, and the kick is good! He bangs it in there! 57 yards out of school record to put the Huskers in front, 33-31. To the near side. Kellogg gets a shotgun snap. Final play of the game. Ron waiting for the wideouts to get downfield. Launches the throw down toward the goal line. Going up. Ball tipped in the air. Touchdown! Jordan Westerkamp! Nebraska wins the game on the final play of the contest! Oh, baby!
Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness! What a scene in Lincoln, baby! Woo!
Deep for Nebraska. Here's Wiley's kick. Gets high. It holds up there. Rogers takes the ball at the 30. He's hit and got away. Back upfield to the 35, to the 40. He's to the 45. He's to the 50, to the 45, to the 40, to the 35, to the 20, to the 10. He's all the way home. Holy moly. Man, woman, and child did that. Put him in the aisle. Johnny the Jet Rogers just tore them loose from their shoes.
Hello and welcome to 5 Points of Contact. This is our ad hoc, kind of like spur of the moment show that we do for CornNation Live. And today, Brian Johannes is with us to talk about portal quarterbacks that Nebraska is seeking because we need quarterbacks, maybe 1 or 2 or 5, or maybe not more than 5, maybe 3. What do you think, Brian? How many quarterbacks do we need to get out of the portal?
I mean, you only just need one good one to get you where you need to be. I think it'd be great to get 2. I mean, we saw that with what was it, Casey Thompson and Chubba Purdy, or whatever. But I think getting 2 is hard because guys want to transfer to a place that they can play. So I think if you get that one good one, that's all it needs.
So should we start with quarterbacks?
Yeah. Let's do it.
Okay. You did an article a couple of days ago, and you list Cam Ward as your number 1 guy. And I have why? The guy fumbled like 15 times last year.
He fits perfectly then.
Yeah,
right?
Well, God, what do you see in Cam Ward that he would be the guy?
I mean, to me, Cam Ward is the top quarterback in the portal. The Athletic did an article where they cited industry experts. That's the term I'm seeing from multiple places. So there must be portal industry experts out there. But they said, I think Feldman talked to a couple coaches too, and they said that Cam Ward was the top, clearly the top quarterback out there, the only true difference maker. I think he's one of 3 guys that I think are slam dunks for Nebraska. And when I watch the tape, he's the guy that just stands out the most to me. He's a true playmaker. To be honest, when I watched him, he reminded me a lot of Tommy Armstrong in his stature, his playing style. I do think he's a better quarterback than what Tommy Armstrong was at Nebraska. But a guy that can it's got the athleticism to move around. He's got a live arm, and he's just a playmaker. I mean, that's the thing that stood out compared to the other 4 guys that Nebraska's been linked to. He's the guy that just made plays, and an offense that is lacking other playmakers. I think he'd be the best fit.
Despite the fumbling.
Yeah. I mean, the couple tapes that I watched, I didn't see any fumbles. So I didn't go back and, full transparency, I didn't go back and watch every single game. But the couple that I did, I didn't see any. So I can't really speak to that too much.
Okay. Who's you mentioned 3, Cam Ward is one of them. Who's next?
I think the three are Cam Ward, Will Howard of Kansas State, and Kyle McCord from Ohio State. I think if Nebraska gets one of those three, you have to be ecstatic. I mean, I rank them. The second guy is Will Howard. He's the guy that I'd like Nebraska to get second. The Kansas State guy. I think he's big, 6'5". He's a good athlete. He's got a strong arm, and so I think he's probably the second best guy that I think they could kind of go out and get.
And then Kyle McCord, and I think somebody Thomas Fidone. I'm pretty sure that's probably not the real Thomas Fidone, but you
never know.
Whatever. He says it's almost confirmed that we have Kyle McCord. What do you like about Kyle McCord? Because that's the focus now.
Yeah, I agree. I think McCord's coming to Nebraska. That's just I don't have an inside source on this, but all indications it looks like McCord is going to come to Nebraska, and I think that's awesome. Like I said, if Nebraska could get either of those three guys, I would be ecstatic. McCord, to me, the reason I have him third is I don't think he's as much of a playmaker as the other two guys, and that's not a knock on him. It's just his playing style. He, to me, is a guy who is just going to get the job done. He's kind of like the quote-unquote game manager, the distributor. He's not going to go out there and carry you on your back and lead you to a victory, but he's going to be able to get the ball to his receivers. Daniel Jeremiah and Bucky Brooks, two former NFL scouts that cover the draft for the NFL Network, they use the term tractors and trailers. Tractors are the guys that kind of that pull everybody along, like a Cam Ward, I think, would be a tractor, whereas a trailer is you kind of need those guys to get you to go. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think he's that guy that's going to distribute the ball.
Sam Leavitt, you don't mention Sam Leavitt at all. Michigan State.
Yeah, he's that fourth guy. I like him. I watched his tape and came away impressed. It's a limited sample size. I think he threw the ball maybe 20 times all season, kind of came in relief. The funny thing is I was chatting with a high school coach that I know, and I said, watching him, he reminds me of Chubba Purdy, like a better version of Chubba Purdy, and that's just his athleticism, his quick release, his just mannerisms, and that reminded me a lot of Chubba Purdy, but a better version, I think. And I like him. I just, you're getting an untested guy that was okay in his limited opportunities at Michigan State. I mean, he did throw a touchdown against Nebraska, but that should have not been a touchdown. But
right.
I just think those other guys are going to get us to where Nebraska needs to be more than what Sam Leavitt would be. And I could be wrong. I mean, we see guys in the portal all the time transfer and never really played and then explode and become stars. So those are the three guys that I think are a little bit more of a home run. I'd be fine if they somehow struck out on those guys and they did get Sam Leavitt. I'd be okay with it. I think there's bigger fish out there.
Okay, let's go back to Kyle McCord. Does it not strike you? I mean, come on. The guy started most of the games for Ohio State this year. They were not very far from being in the college football playoff. They're literally one of the best teams in the nation. Why would he leave? Doesn't that strike you as odd? And I'm going to make this statement, and I know people are probably going to go a little nuts about it, but he said specifically, I don't want to go to a lesser Big Ten team. Didn't he? He said he made that statement, and I kind of look at it and go, okay, why the hell would he come to Nebraska? Tell me the answer to these things, because, these are questions that I think a lot of people have. Maybe not. Maybe we're all wishful thinking and I'm a lunatic, and there you go.
Yeah, like you said, he was 11-1 as the starter. He started every game this year. Their only loss was to Michigan, who's the number one seed in the college football playoff, and they lost by 6. He did throw an interception late, 2 interceptions in that game. I mean, but I wouldn't blame that loss on Kyle McCord. The thing is my gut, my analysis of the situation was Ohio State feels they have an upgrade over him. I think as soon as he left the portal, entered the portal, my initial thought was Cam Ward's going to Ohio State. That was my first kind of thought that popped in my head. I just, they do have a highly rated quarterback coming in, Aaron Nolan. I don't know if they'll start a true freshman, but I could see a Will Howard potentially going there. I could see Cam. I honestly, like I said, I still think, you really haven't heard Cam Ward tied to a place. You've heard Nebraska went out and visited him, but Oregon's probably going to get Dylan Gabriel. Ohio or USC, they've been on the Will Howard talk. I think Cam Ward is going to probably end up in Columbus, and I think they just felt they had a better upgrade over McCord, and so that's why he's probably in the portal, because he wants to go start somewhere.
So this is what it is right now. Quarterbacks are just going to it's musical chairs. And the thing about it is I think it's telling that Matt Rule comes up at a press conference and he says, it'll take $1.5 to $2 million to get a top level quarterback. And obviously somebody out there said, well, that's the cost. Here you go. And then now they're all over the place trying to find a good quarterback, because let's be honest, that they can't do what we did the first season. And that's my thing with Cam Ward, is I kind of look at it and go, okay, the guy had a lot of turnovers. You can't you might be a playmaker, but you cannot have a team next year that's like, look, we have a lot of the pieces, and oh my God, all of a sudden we have a failure at quarterback again. You do that 2 years in a row, and it's, people are going to maybe not get out the pitchforks, but they'll be looking at them in their closet with earnest. Go ahead.
You just look at the situation, and Nebraska went 5-7 this year. We had how many games that you're like, you know what? If we didn't turn the ball over, we could have won that game. And you think of a guy like Kyle McCord. Kyle McCord had a 4-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio, and maybe he's not this dynamic run around, throw the ball 70 yards down the field, but he just knows how to distribute that ball. And he put the ball into some tight situations, but he never really put it into dangerous situations. And you've got a guy that could sit there and read the field, distribute the ball. If we had a guy like that on the roster, who knows? Maybe Nebraska's an 8-win team this year. You look at the Minnesota game, Nebraska lost that game because turnovers. The Maryland game, we could just rehash the whole season. So
yeah, we could.
If you have a quarterback that can just distribute the ball without turning it over, they're going to be fine.
So there's been talk that if McCord comes, he's bringing a receiver with him. Have you seen anything about that?
Yeah, I haven't seen it, but a lot of people have told me. Was it Julian Fleming? I know Fleming's the last name. A bigger receiver for Ohio State. He's been there for a while. He was always kind of that third fiddle. You had, Chris Olave and Jackson Smith and Ajibba. You had
Marvin Harrison.
Marvin Harrison. You had there's even another guy too that I'm forgetting. But they've always had all those other guys, and Fleming was the other highly rated guy, and he just never broke through. And it's funny. I was talking to someone. I'm like, yeah, Fleming's never really impressed me, and they're like, well, that's because you're watching Chris Olave and Marvin Harrison Jr. and comparing him right to that, and that's true. And I think getting a guy like him, a veteran receiver, a guy that's produced at the elite, like at the top of college football, we're not our wide receiver room's not just overflowing with talent. We got good guys, don't get me wrong. I like a lot of our young receivers, but getting a veteran guy in there, a guy that's have a connection to Kyle McCord would definitely go a long ways.
So the knock that I've seen again for people against McCord is that he's not mobile, that he's more of a stand-up, more of a drop back passer guy that's going to stay in the pocket and that's it. What do you think of that?
I mean, that's who he is, and that's another reason why I liked Will Howard and Cam Ward a little bit better, just because they're a little bit more mobile. Nebraska's offensive line, I thought it improved this year, but they still have their deficiencies, and no one's offensive line is just rock solid 100% of the time. But we're not going to be running triple option with him. They're not going to be running a lot of quarterback design runs. But he's got the ability. What I like is that he's able to move within the pocket. He's able to climb it when it's necessary. He's able to kind of move a little bit laterally to find his throwing lanes. A couple of games I watched Notre Dame and Penn State, two really good defenses. And he was able to, when he needed to, scramble and pick up some extra yardage. So, yeah, he's not a mobile guy, but he's also not me back there, not being able to escape any pressure. And so, but we got to think about, too, Marcus Satterfield, when he was at South Carolina, they didn't run they had Spencer Rattler, and he wasn't running him, and he wanted him to sit in the pocket. So I think eventually, even Danny Kaline from Bellevue West is he's a pocket quarterback. And I think that's the direction that they want to go. They want to be Michigan, run the ball, throw from the pocket. And I think Kyle McCord would allow him to get there.
You think that's it? Michigan? The offense that we want to look like.
Rule said that. I think leading up to the Michigan game, he said that that's kind of what he wants Nebraska to be under him, is that power running a game with not that they're going to just turn around and hand the ball off, but we kind of saw that, run heavy, stay in the pocket, play action throwing. I think that's kind of what he hopes Nebraska can be, that physical rushing attack, that physical team.
So if let's say that we get Kyle McCord, right? So coming into next spring, Jeff Sims is leaving. I think he's already in the portal.
Yeah, I think so. Oh, I don't know if he's in it, but it's been reported that he's going into it. I haven't checked.
So we're going to go into next season with Kyle McCord. Chubba Purdy is probably a backup, honestly. Let's face it. You've got a more experienced quarterback coming in at that high level. And then we have Danny Kaline coming in. That's not enough quarterbacks to me.
Well, you still got Harburg, too.
Well,
he's still there.
Do we? Everybody, people are talking about him like switching to tight end and stuff. If you move to Harburg, you're changing your whole offense.
Yes.
Yeah. So I guess I don't mean to be mean to Heinrich Harburg. I think he's been an exceptional, Nebraska guy, but he's not. I don't think he fits in this puzzle. So I'm going to go back to 3 quarterbacks is not enough to me.
Yeah, it's not. But your also hope is most teams don't ever get to their third quarterback in most situations. We saw it with Nebraska having Sims struggle and then get hurt. Harburg have success, then struggle, and then get hurt. And then we went to Purdy. I think Purdy's a good backup. I liked what I saw out of him against Wisconsin and Iowa. We didn't put up a ton of points. He was also playing injured. We had other deficiencies as well. But, I watched him and I'm like, and there were some people out there that are saying, well, could Nebraska just roll with Purdy as their quarterback next year? And and my initial thought was, he's got some talent. I think he'd be a good backup. And he's got that ability that he could sit in the pocket. We saw it against Wisconsin and Iowa. We tended to throw the ball a little bit more than we did with Harburg and Sims at times. So I think if you had those two, I'd feel pretty comfortable. Anytime we could be all reality. Anytime we get to a third quarterback, you're always in trouble. You look at it, a third quarterback cost Florida State a chance to go to the playoff. And so
we could go down that road, but we're not going to right now.
But I think if you had to, Danny Kaline's there, Is he going to be ready? I don't know, but maybe it's, week 6 and he's had, he's going to be in for the spring. He's going to have a fall camp. He's going to have time. Maybe he can come in and play a game if needed. And then you still get your 4-game window for those freshmen, and maybe he can get us by for a game or two. I don't know. But like I said, I think if you had Kyle McCord and Chubba Purdy as your 2 starter and backup, I would feel comfortable.
I think this is just you look out there and you kind of look at, except for maybe the top 4 teams in the nation, this kind of looks like what football looked. Maybe I should complete a sentence. Except for like the top 4 to maybe 6 teams in the nation, you're looking at teams all over the place that have one primary quarterback, and then the drop off it's far to the backup. That's my observation. Do you concur with that, or you think I'm off?
No, I don't think you're wrong. It's hard to. I think it's also hard to tell because teams they leave their starters in a lot longer than they used to, and maybe it's just what we were used to with Nebraska in the '90s when they were just boat racing teams, and then you'd put in your backup, and then they would continue the dominance, and then a lot of teams, they just play their starters late. And it's like, I know watching film for the NFL draft and that it's like, this team's up like 4 touchdowns in the 4th quarter. Why is their starter still in the game? To me, it's like, I don't want to get that guy injured. And I know it's probably to pad stats and stuff like that, and to show more dominance to the committee. But I mean, I don't think backup quarterbacks play as much, but yeah, I mean, there's always going to be that drop off unless you got a young up and coming guy like you had Justin Fields, and then you go to CJ Stroud. But we didn't know what CJ Stroud was going to be until he started playing.
Okay, Dion Pryor says McCord is a giant upgrade to what we have had. Can't wait to see him at Nebraska for spring ball. It sounds like this is a done deal, when people are talking like that. So do you think it is?
All indications, what I'm seeing, it looks like he's going to be the guy. It doesn't sound like, I think one of the Husker sites, someone said that, and they made a good point. McCord, I think he committed to Ohio State as a sophomore in high school. And so he didn't really go through the true recruiting process. And so it sounds like he's kind of getting that experience. And so I think maybe that's why
he's having fun with it.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't blame him. I can only imagine being a highly coveted prospect and having people swoon all over you. I mean, usually I'm having to do the swooning. But I can't imagine, just we see that with recruits. They take all 5 visits because you want to be pampered and told how awesome you are. So if he didn't really get that, and I think that's what happened when the portal first opened after the whole pandemic, and that is a lot of those guys didn't get to go through that true recruiting process. And they're like, hey, let me get wined and dined. And so maybe that's why McCord hasn't pulled the trigger yet. But I think all indications at this point, I'd be surprised if he's not Nebraska's quarterback next year.
Okay. Vince Watson asks, why would Purdy stay? This is for you, the quarterback whisperer of CornNation.
Well, I think at this point, I think Purdy to be a starter in college football would have to take a step down. So he'd either have to go to the group of 5 or group of 6, whatever it is now, group of 4. He'd have to either go there or maybe even the FCS level. And maybe he's just, maybe he just likes it here. And we've seen over the course of the last 2 years, he's actually got to come in and play. And so who knows? Maybe he decides to leave because once again, I'm not, Kyle McCord's going to be the starter or whoever they bring in. If it's not McCord, maybe if it's a Sam Leavitt, I think Purdy stays and competes with him. But maybe, like I said, maybe he likes it. Maybe he's like, he understands his situation and says, you know what, this is the best place for me. I wouldn't be shocked if he left. But like I said, I think he'd have to take a drop down and maybe he just doesn't want to.
Morel of the story says McCord will coach Satterfield as far as quarterbacks go? This is a point of discussion with people about hiring a quarterbacks coach or getting somebody different to coach the quarterbacks, and that it shouldn't be Satterfield and yada, yada. What do you think is going to happen in that situation with the quarterback coaching? Or what would you like to see? How's that for a little bit easier? I'll ease you into that subject.
I've been very cautious to criticize Satterfield, just because to me, I like. It's easy to blame offensive coordinators when you don't like it. I do it with my favorite NFL team, and I've been willing to do that. But when I look at Nebraska's situation, I also am fully aware that Matt Rule he doesn't have his fingers or his hands in, his whole body's in on this offense. He's practically the co-offensive coordinator. And so as much as we want to criticize Satterfield for play calling and offensive design, Matt Rule's is equally a part of that as well. So we also, the limitations that I think our quarterback play had last year, and having younger receivers, there's only so much you could do. I think our offense is a lot more basic than it could be. And so Satterfield's not a natural quarterback guy. There was talk when he got hired that he was going to be the tight ends coach, right, and they were going to have someone else be the quarterback's coach. I'm a big fan of having a guy that is a quarterback or a quarterback teacher as your coach. We saw it with Iowa. I think one of the biggest problems that Iowa had with Brian Ferentz as being their offensive coordinator is he was also their quarterback's coach. I mean, he's a offensive line guy. I mean, you look at Michigan, Sherrone Moore's their offensive coordinator, but he's also their offensive line coach, and they have a separate quarterback's coach. So I think with Satterfield, I think I don't think he's completely tied to the quarterback position. So it wouldn't shock me if they brought in somebody. As it's been reported out there, I don't think that move's going to be made till after signing day. So I don't think anyone expecting a quick move is going to happen. Maybe they go get someone from the NFL. But I think, kind of to circle back, using my NFL draft experience and covering the NFL, the rookie quarterbacks that come in, the ones that have the most success are the ones that have good situations. I mean, we were looking at Bryce Young in Carolina. They didn't really have a plan around him. I think they had like a running back as an offensive coordinator. Right. And you see that too. I remember Carson. I know it's tough because Carson Wentz is kind of practically out of the league now. But when Carson Wentz came into Philadelphia, he was the number 2 pick. Jared Goff was the number 1 pick to the Rams. Carson Wentz had Doug Peterson, who was a former NFL quarterback, as his head coach. They had their offensive coordinator was a former quarterback, was Frank Reich, and then their quarterbacks coach was LaFleur. So they had 3 quarterbacks working on that offense with him, whereas Jared Goff had Jeff Fisher, who was a defensive coordinator. Their offensive coordinator was Aaron Cromer, who was an offensive line coach. And so you see that all throughout the league. You look at the rookie quarterbacks that come in, they have those people around them that can teach them the quarterback position. So circling back, long way around it, I think getting a quarterback coach in could really help, the development of Danny Keyline, the aid of Kyle McCord, and then just let Satterfield worry about the play designs and what plays would benefit this team.
Okay. Matt Snovak says, I think Harburg will leave after the spring game. Comments on that?
I think that kind of goes with what I said about Chubba Purdy. I mean, where is he going to go? If he wants to play quarterback, I think he's going to drop down. He's a Nebraska kid who's loved this program. I think a lot of these players, I think they kind of understand. I think Harburg understands the situation. He knows that he's got some limitations. He's got time to work on. I think the coaches like him a lot. I think his teammates like him. Him and Fedoni seem to be, really good friends. Maybe they move. I don't think they move him to a different position, but some guys, not everybody wants to go and leave. I mean, we see the portal,
Right.
all these guys transferring. That's not for everybody. And a guy who, and the NFL is not the end game for a lot of these guys as well. And so maybe he does leave. Once again, wouldn't shock me. But I also see him as a guy that's like, I love this program. I want to be a part of it. I want to help us out. Maybe I'll get a shot again. Maybe I can improve and get that opportunity. Maybe he just wants to help the program get back to where it needs to be, and he does that from behind the scenes.
Milt Tenopper's book, I think, is the one where I'm going to take this quote from. And he said, it was important that everybody understood their place on the team, and the place of the scout team people was to help the team prepare for the week's opponent. And if Heinrich Harburg, we'll all talk about where is he going to fit. Well, he's going to fit at the place where we're going to face a running quarterback every week, I think, with, running whatever plays the opponent would be. And people kind of probably go, well, that's, you're not a starter. That's not that big a deal. Okay, well, I think Milt Tenopper's teams were pretty successful, and you were still part of an extremely successful program. So I wouldn't discount that much. That's where I guess that's my take on Heinrich Harburg and him. He's a Nebraska guy. I mean, he's largely ignored by the previous staff to the point that Mark Whipple wouldn't even let him participate in the quarterback room meeting. So, and he still stayed. So that's a Nebraska guy. So, yeah, I guess I'd be shocked if he left. But
anything
can happen.
And he's a guy, to me, I don't know him. I've never talked to him. You see what you see on practice and the clips and game interviews. He seems like a guy that just, like I said, wants to help this program. He's an athlete. He like you said, maybe he continues to get better, and maybe he's, we've seen this across the nation where a guy plays, struggles, and then puts in the work and maybe gets another chance and improves. And maybe Nebraska finds a role with him. Maybe they kind of use him as a little bit of like a gadget player, and they put him in on short yardage as, to get, to run quarterback power because he's a big, tough runner. I know I didn't like how he stopped at contact at times, but maybe he's able to, like, hey, this is my role. Maybe they kind of use him in that H-back role like Jerry Bonner does. Maybe they, they find some way to kind of allow him to contribute. I mean, heck, maybe he's on kickoff coverage next year. He's got that straight line speed. So like I said, I wouldn't be shocked that he left. It would surprise me if he did. And I think he's just going to try to find a way to help Nebraska at some place, somewhere on this team.
Okay. Paul Dallin, because he does this, says, hear me out. Andy Jackson, she's got more shoulder strength than anyone in the quarterback portal right now. Always with the volleyball stuff, Paul. There is an incredible lineup of volleyball on TV later this afternoon and this evening. I mean, you look at the matchups and the teams, it's just amazing. That's my volleyball plug. And I watched, who was it? Tennessee drive Texas to 5 sets and then lose 16-14 in the final set. And, I was upset as the Tennessee fans about that. Husker Chuck says, could Chubba start in the Pac-2? And the Pac-2 is going to play most of their games with the Mountain West next year, if I remember correctly.
That just seems, it's so wild to me that the Mountain West is willing to do that, because most of the Mountain West TV deal comes up in like 2 years. And so the whole notion is that once that Mountain West deal's up, the two remaining Pac-12 teams, the Pac-2, are going to swoop those teams up. So it's like, why would the Mountain West be like, oh yeah, we'll schedule with you for these next couple of years so you can take all of our teams. But I don't know. I mean, like I said, I think Chubba's a guy that would, if he drops down, could be a starter. Oregon State and Washington are practically dropping down to the group of 5 level. So they both need quarterbacks. DJ Ungalele is in the portal right now for Oregon State. Cam Ward is in the portal for Washington State. So, I mean, they're looking for quarterbacks as well. Maybe he can go out west and hang out with his brother more.
This was a bit Well, I had a went back and forth this morning on Twitter about this. You know, somebody suggested that we shouldn't get quarterbacks. We should pay more money to get offensive linemen. And Matt Snowak comes in with a question: who are we going to get to protect McCord, though? LOL. What do you think of that?
I mean, I thought and maybe I'm in the minority, I thought our offensive line got better. I mean, when's the last time, and maybe I just haven't paid attention to this, when's the last time someone's called for Raiola to be fired? I mean, he was easily like, oh, we got to get rid of him. The only reason why he's here is because his nephew. I haven't heard his name mentioned in like
I've seen a few comments on Facebook, or but Facebook is always salty. It's like full of the angriest, angriest people in the world. But yeah, you're right. And plus Raiola pulled in Grant Bricks as a recruit. So
well, I think Teddy Prohaska, once he came in for Cochran, I thought he played pretty well. I mean, he came in early in the season and it looked rough, but I think once he kind of got his feet under him, got used to being out there, I thought he played pretty well. I mean, Bryce Benhart was everyone's whipping boy for how long, and he ended up being Nebraska's probably their best offensive lineman last year. Ben Scott's coming back. You've got guys inside that have got experience, and I think slowly but surely the offensive line is continuing to get better. So, yeah, it'd be nice to go out and get those guys, but we saw last year there wasn't like AJ Cornelius was a guy from Rhode Island that Nebraska was hard after. He goes to Oregon. Walter Rouse from Stanford was committed to here out of the portal and then flipped to Oklahoma, and I don't even know if he played for them really. So getting those top
a little.
Yeah, getting top offensive linemen in the portal is really tough. Usually those guys go straight to like Michigan got the guy from Arizona State. That was really good. So that's really tough to get, is those offensive linemen. There's not a lot of them out there. That seems to be the one position you don't see a ton of guys transfer. So I think they're set at center and the tackles. Ethan Piper probably not going to play next year.
Right.
Nuri, I think, is exhausted his eligibility. So you've got other guys that have got, was it Justin Evans, or who was the guy that's
Justin
he at times played well. Yeah, at times he played well last year. So I think they'll be fine. They got some recruits in. They got some guys that were freshmen this year that redshirted. I mean, Sam Sledge was on the 2 deep the entire season. Never saw any action. So the fact that he was the number 2 guy as a true freshman, they must be pretty excited about him.
All right. Steve-O says, has anyone addressed that if we had a pseudo-dominant offensive line, we wouldn't need a world-beater quarterback? Is this too old school? What do you think of that?
I don't think it is. I mean, as I mentioned, I think Rule wants to be Michigan. That's what he wants Nebraska to be, a team that's going to assert their dominance running the ball and then hit you with the passes when they need to. And I don't think we're going to be running the ball 80% of the time, but I think they probably want a 50-50 split and be a physical running a team that could kind of hit play action, spread you out every once in a while. I mean, that's what Michigan is. I mean, we think Michigan, Blake Corum, just pound the ball. And other than that Penn State game, they still threw the ball, 25, 30 times a game at points. So I don't think that's old school. I mean, it's not air raid, spread you out like we're seeing a lot of teams do, but you still see, especially in the Big Ten, a lot of teams have success doing that.
I think the answer to this question is, how far do you want to go? I mean, do you want to be a college football playoff team? Do you want to be in the top 4 of the Big Ten? I think you have to, maybe not a world beater quarterback, but they better be one of the 10 best quarterbacks in the nation, because the quarterback's position is just, I think the biggest difference, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, is this. The best quarterbacks in the nation now, they move around in high school just like they do in college. Yeah. So they're going to like a Mater D in California. They're going to IMG Academy.
Bosco.
I'm trying to think. Yeah, places in Georgia. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's, you know what I mean? They are going to these schools that develop the top quarterbacks that go into the NCAA. So those guys, when they come out of college, or out of high school, they're much more prepared to play in college than like a guy that played at Kearney Catholic, honestly, or maybe a guy that played at Omaha Bellevue West. Maybe that's a wrong indication or a wrong direction with that, but they're much more advanced. And if you want to be at this upper level, you can't just run the ball all the time. You have to have like a Marvin Harrison, maybe not that level, but a damn good receiving core along with a good running game. So you got to have all the pieces to be in the top level of this stuff anymore.
Yeah, I mean, the teams that are in the college football playoff, I mean, I think Ari Wasserman for The Athletic has his Stars Matter thing, and there's like the blue chip ratio. I think 247 does that, where they talk about the teams that win the national titles have a certain percentage of their team as these elite level players. And at this point, Nebraska, they just need to get back to being not competitive, because we've been competitive. We just lost the games. We need to get back to just being, in essence, not a fear. Like, we want teams to say, "Oh crap, Nebraska's next." They're a good team. They're gonna beat the crap out of us. I mean, think back to what Wisconsin was under Bielema and early Paul Chris. I think that's what Nebraska, I think, can get back to. And those teams, they weren't contending for national titles every year, but they were a favorite to go to the Big Ten championship. They were going to win it every few years. They were going to potentially win it and then get into that discussion. And I think Nebraska can get there. But we have to, that's why I loved Rule when they hired him. He's a developmental guy, and that's what this program needs. We don't have the recruits in the area, the sheer numbers of them. It's harder to get them to come here than it used to be. And that can change as Nebraska continues, if they continue to move forward like I think they are. We're never going to get the recruiting class that a Georgia can, but can we get to that top 10? I think they can under Rule. But his ability to take a guy that's a stud, like look at Jalen Lloyd this year. He's only a freshman, and he was hardly recruited as a high school kid. And he came to Nebraska because Matt Rule loves those track athletes. And I saw a lot of potential, and I'm super excited for Jalen Lloyd in the future. And it's things like that Matt Rule is really good at, and that's why I was so excited when he was hired.
Okay, Michigan versus the world. Love the name. Love that you're here. It says McCord is going to come in with a fire and chase a Heisman. Ohio fans are idiots for running him off and harassing him. I will say, you guys, Michigan versus the world in the Ohio State. My God, you took that rivalry to an entirely level that beyond way. I always thought it was insane. Now it's like insane cubed. So, thanks for the comment. I do, the whole Ryan Day should be fired after losing to Michigan thing. I mean, my God, that's a little nuts.
The funny thing is my wife loves football. She doesn't follow it. She likes watching it. She knows stuff, but she doesn't follow it. She didn't go and read articles and obsess like the rest of us do. And so after that game, I told her, I said, gosh, Ohio State fans are going to want to fire their coach. And she's like, well, why? What? And I said, well, he's only lost like 7 games over the course of like 6 years. And he's only lost like in playoffs and to Michigan. And she looked at me, she's like, why would you fire that person? And it's like, well, because he's not beating their rival. So it's insane. But Michigan, I work with a Michigan fan, and I kept telling him, I said, your team's going to be a lot different next year. Even if Harbaugh comes back, you're losing a lot. And I think Ryan Day, if they get this quarterback, if they get a Cam Ward or somebody else, Ryan Day's a good offensive mind, and they're going to continue to have elite talent. And all it takes is next year them to catch them. And it's not like they're getting blown out either. It's close games.
Okay, Michigan versus the world again. says you can win 9 or 10 games with a Deacon Hill. It's a steep climb after that. And again, this goes back to what I said earlier. Where do you want to go? Where do you want to be? I don't think Nebraska is going to make a leap, in a single year where Kyle McCord wins the Heisman. That'd be nice. But, that's where do you want to be as we go on through this process, hopefully of climbing back up into the upper echelon of college football. Lewis Papp says, Dylan Gabriel committed to Oregon. That was another guy I was shocked that left. I mean, he played at Oklahoma. Oklahoma had a pretty decent season.
Yeah, his offensive coordinator left, though.
Okay.
Jeff Lebby went to Mississippi State, and Lebby was at Central Florida with Dylan Gabriel initially, so he's kind of followed him around. I thought Gabriel would probably go to Mississippi State to follow him, but I think he wanted to kind of maybe contend for a playoff. And I think Oregon fits him pretty well. So I'm not a huge Dylan Gabriel fan, but that's kind of me as the NFL draft prospect guy. I mean, if Dylan Gabriel came to Nebraska, I'd be doing backflips.
Okay. Alexander Daloff says, I was up in Minneapolis for a game. Do you ever meet fans? I thought about, he was talking about the basketball game here recently that was honestly a huge disappointment to lose. I thought about going to that game. To be honest, to be completely blunt, right now I'm dealing with issues with my eyes because it's always something with me and I can't focus properly. And if I go out at night, I turn into, it's miserable. It's been pretty miserable. I'm working on that to fix it. Do you ever meet fans? You know what? I plan on getting to Lincoln for the spring game and probably a baseball series also. And I would like to plan some kind of meetup or some kind of thing. Brian might even be there. We'd have a bunch of other CornNation people there. We'd get the whole CornNation gang together and, I don't know, commit crimes or something. Yeah, that's it.
I almost met you. I almost met you in person last year for the spring game. You were standing off at the statue by East Stadium, and I was about to go say hi to you, but my daughters wanted Chick-fil-A. So we got in the line, and we get done. I turn, and I think you and Tom had just left, and I was like, oh, there was my chance.
Well, we'll see what we can do this year.
Dang Chick-fil-A.
Okay. We're gonna go. Let's see. Well, John Christophic says, "Do we have a chance of landing Kyle McCord?" And I think that's a valid question because I looked at that and went, "Why in the hell would he want to come to Nebraska?" But I think the thing is we have been beat up for years, and we have a very negative attitude toward our program. And I think the fact that Kyle McCord and some of these quarterbacks are even talking to Nebraska, it's not just about money. You're not going to go to a place where you're going to fail just to get paid, because you can go someplace where you're not going to fail and get paid a lot. You know what I mean? It's going to be a much more enjoyable experience. So do we have a chance? I think it's pretty obvious that since we're talking to all these guys and they're listening to us. Yeah. And it sounds like it's becoming more reality all the time. Well, what do you think of that?
And a couple things. As you mentioned, money's going to be the driving factor for some players. The Athletic did an anonymous survey, I think, with the recruits that were at the Army All-American game or the Under Armour All-American game, and they asked them to kind of rank like what led them to pick the school that they're picking, and NIL was like 4th or 5th for a lot of them. So we may want to say, oh, they're just going to the highest bidder. A lot of these guys, like you said, still want to go to a place that they're going to be able to win, have a chance to play, move on to the next level. I mean, and like you said with Nebraska, we beat ourselves up. We're our worst critics. But just look at the situation. You got Matt Rule as your head coach, who's a proven winner, a proven program builder. Nebraska went 5-7 this year with how many games that you should have said with better quarterback play they would have won. You look at our weapons. I mean, Thomas Fidone played well last year, is healthy. What's he going to look like next year when he has another year of has he ever had a true full off season? So I think he's only going to get better. We got Carter Nelson coming in. We got a couple other guys that are coming in. Malachi Coleman showed a lot of promise as a freshman. I mentioned Jalen Lloyd. They're getting, they got all these other guys, but Doss is going to be back. They're raving about one of their other freshman receivers. You potentially could get Julian Fleming to come in. The offensive line's improved. They can, we've got some backs that are I like. I mean, so there's, in all reality, I mean, is it Marvin Harrison? Is it Keon Coleman? Is it Malik Neighbors level receivers? No, but there's a lot of talent in there. I mean, Malachi Coleman's 6'4", 6'5", and is a legit track athlete. I mean,
yeah,
you don't get a lot of those guys aren't just walking up and down the street.
Right. You're doing this thing. It's freaking December. Now I'm like, when's football season going to be again?
And we're
going to win the off season again. And then, I'm going to be like, God, please.
To be fair, Nebraska could sign you and me to their football team, and somehow people would spin it to us winning the Big Ten. So there's always that too.
Okay. That's true. Oh my God, I'm getting too many texts and phone calls. Okay, let's just take a few more comments and then we're going to be done. Brett says, I hope Emmett Johnson doesn't enter the transfer portal because I think he's going to be really good. He did, tweet out a little bit after the season was over for Nebraska that he was kind of a tweet that indicated he was looking forward to next year. So I don't know why he would leave. Vince Watson says, embrace the Kool-Aid, John. Oh my God. Michigan versus the world is every team is undefeated again in the offseason. It's not even the offseason for you guys. I mean, all these the thing that I guess is the biggest surprise for some of these teams and some of these quarterbacks is I'm in the transfer portal and they're leaving before their bowl games are playing. And I mean, Ohio State is not playing in a slouchy bowl game. And Oklahoma is not, you know what I mean? They're playing in fairly decent. Is this a sign that the Bulls should just go away now and we're going to have a playoff, or what do you think?
Well, this may open up a can of worms. My opinion, I hate that the college football playoff uses the Bulls. Like, who cares? Who cares that the orange? I mean, personally, I think, especially next year with the 12-team playoff, I think the first two rounds should be home sites. I think the first round is. Then give those teams that have the bye, give them a home game. I mean, Michigan's the number 1 seed. Let's say Ole Miss wins and plays them. How awesome would it be for Mississippi to go to Ann Arbor, Michigan in January and play a game?
Yeah.
And I think it negates a lot of the stuff. I mean, Big Ten teams in November, late October, early November, they have to play in the elements, and that kind of shapes how they have to build their team. Why do we take that disadvantage away? And then maybe the Final Four, you go and I like how the championship game, it's just a game. They have towns bid on it. Do that for the Final Four. Have those Final Four teams bid. And it could be at the Orange Bowl in Miami, but it's not the Orange Bowl. And then I'm like, for the rest of the teams, I don't care that, in all reality, I don't care that guys don't go and play in those games. Like, if Nebraska played in a bowl game and someone decided not to play in it, I don't, like, we saw that with Corcoran, or not Brendan Hymas, when he played that extra game during the pandemic. He said, I'm going to sit out. I think JoJo did the same thing. I didn't have a problem with that. It's like, they make that's their bodies. They've got their future, and then that lets another young guy get an opportunity to play and kind of get primed for next year. So I also don't put a lot of stock in bowl games. So if a team wins a bowl game, I'm not like, oh my gosh, they're so awesome. Same thing if they lose, if they just look like crap. But to me, it's a reward for the players for the season. And it's just an opportunity to watch more football. And I think if we look at it outside of the playoff, if you look at it like that, just enjoy the football. Who cares if a player sits out? Just enjoy watching football, because in February after the Super Bowl, everyone's just clamoring for more football. And it's like, we had all this football here that everyone just sat there and complained about. Enjoy it for what it is.
Right. Mike Corgan says there needs to be seated home games, too expensive for fans to travel each week. That's the key to this. I hope next year when we get into this 12-game playoff, everybody starts screaming about that because, if you're a team that's like, I don't know, let's say a USC, and maybe you don't even hardly have to travel. So, and then none of your fans are going to show up because you don't really have that many fans that go to games anyway. But you know what I mean? This should be a huge issue. I hope.
I agree with that 100%. I mean, you think about it. Let's say Nebraska goes to the Big Ten championship game. I mean, those tickets aren't cheap. You're flying to Indianapolis. Well, then they win and they go to the 14 playoff. Well, then it's like, well, you want to go and watch them in that first round game. So you're going to New Orleans or Miami or wherever, and then they win again. I mean, this is all pipe dreams right here. That's 3 games. That's a lot to ask for a big fan, for a fan base to go to. And so that's why you see some of these fan bases, maybe they don't show up to the championship, their conference championship game, because they're like, oh, we're going to go to the playoff. I'm going to spend my money on that. And maybe I just don't have all that walking around cash it's a big deal to me, but
yeah. Michigan versus the world. And again, with another comment, we all know most of the college football home games will be at the SEC locations. Total screw job coming. I'm going to agree with that because for years I watched Nebraska go down to bowl games in the South and just get screwed over by officials that, you're not old. I mean, for God's sakes, they called Dave Remington for offsides against LSU. Who does that in a game? You call the center offsides. They did that once. And it did, that whole thing, I just thought, every time I watch this go to the South to play a game, it's like, what the hell is going to happen this time? All right, this is going to be our last comment. I always know that. I say that, and then we go for like 5 more. But it's from Minnie. And Minnie, we need to get together sometime. You need to, I got your email. We'll talk. Brian, are you planning on doing a video when we can get a QB, a quarterback? Always like your information.
Yeah, I got the stuff. I watched McCord, broke him down. I just need to have time. Life's been pretty hectic this week, so I got all his tape broken down. I got the clips set aside, so I just need to organize them and put out a video. I'm probably going to try to get that out. We'll see. Hopefully by the end of this weekend. I'd like to get it out before he commits, but I got it all ready. I just need to kind of organize it. I have same thing with Sam Leavitt. I might put one out if I get to that before anybody commits. I'll probably put a Leavitt one out. And we'll just kind of see. Regardless of who Nebraska gets at quarterback, I'll have some type of video out there kind of breaking them down. I like to do that just to show fans. It's one thing to be able to go out and go to YouTube and say, hey, Ohio State versus this team, and then you just watch the offense, which is a good thing to do. But I like to be able to try and break it down and say, okay, here's what I'm seeing. Kyle McCord throws with a lot of anticipation. Here's some examples of that. Hey, he's not the most mobile quarterback, but look how he kind of moves in the pocket. So that gives people a chance to kind of maybe see the things that maybe you don't quite catch if you're just sitting back and watching a game.
All right. You know what? We're coming up on an hour. I usually try to keep these to an hour because, oh my God, Greg makes me go for way too long when we're doing the 5 Hard on Thursday night. And I don't want to say it's torture because, I do enjoy these things, but wow. An hour is about good. All right. I screwed this up. John, will you be doing a reaction to Husker volleyball? Hopefully in a very good, positive manner. Yes. Let's say Lewis Papp says, come on, people, click that like button. Please do that. And I think that's going to be it. And I don't really have an outro other than to say, what, thank you all for the support on the channel. Thank you for supporting CornNation. And Brian, do you have anything you need to plug?
I haven't put it out there as much as I have been, but like I said, those videos should be coming out. So the YouTube channel draft_Brian, as it shows up on the screen. If you search that, make sure you give it a subscribe, watch each of my videos 100 times. That'd be awesome. But other than that, I think that's where to go. I'll try to do some more portal updates as more information comes for the quarterbacks. Last one I did was on the 6th, I think it was Wednesday, which has had a lot of information just hasn't come out yet. So if more information does come out, I'll probably update that. Otherwise, just be on the lookout for those videos. I'll probably post them in an article at CornNation. So if you're following there, subscribe too.
Yeah, there you go. All right. Goodbye, Brian.
Goodbye.